Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Saez. Today, I wanted to touch on a fight that is coming up, and I'm really, really excited for it. And that's the fight between Jaron, Ennis, Boots, and Sergey Lipinets. Look, 147 pounds is arguably the deepest division in boxing. You already know you have the two kingpins of the division. You have on one side Errol the Truth Spence, multiple titleist. Errol, undefeated, man down, came back from his injury, a better fighter, in my opinion, more hungry, more disciplined, just more everything, in my opinion. Errol Spence looked fantastic against Danny Garcia, shut down everything Danny wanted to do. And honestly, it wasn't a close fight. It was a dominant performance by Errol Spence. Then on the top ranked side, you have Terrence Bud Crawford, who is again another dominant fighter. He is undefeated and truthfully untested. No one's pushed him to the brink. No fight has truthfully been close yet. And at 147 pounds, I wish he had a better fight on his resume. But against Kell Brook, his first real true test, according to the critics and boxing pundits, he passed with flying colors. That fight with Kell Brook said a lot. It was a devastating knockout, and he actually beat Kell Brook better than Errol Spence, his other counterpart, did. However, it was a different Kell Brook, different time. Yes, I know, but Kell Brook, no punk, not a scrub, came out there, tried his best, and he got dominated. So 147 pounds is loaded. You got the Shawn Porters of the world who, as you saw, pushed Errol Spence to the brink. Did he win? No, but Shawn Porter is certainly a formidable fighter. You still, I hope Danny Garcia sticks around because, yeah, I know he lost to Errol Spence, but he's been talking about moving up to 154 pounds. And I just don't get the move, honestly, because at 154, Danny Garcia, what is there to prove? Can you really beat Charlo? Do you really think you can beat Charlo at 154? I think at 147 pounds, you weren't the strongest of 147 pounders. Sure, you had a really, really solid left hook and a pretty good right hand. But at 154, you're fighting guys that are substantially bigger than you. And in terms of skill, Charlo, say what you want, hate him, I love him. He's fought a lot of good people at 154 pounds. And I don't think Daniel Garcia really represents a style that stylistically can give 154 pounders trouble at the high end. You may beat a couple 154 pounders, but you're not going to beat the top. Then you got the Manny Pacquiao's of the world who Manny Pacquiao is still Manny Pacquiao. You still got Keith Thurman. So 147 pounds is undoubtedly one of the most deep, if not the most deep divisions in boxing. So when a fight like this comes up, Jaron in his boots, you see the highlights. He can switch. He's a switch hitter, has power, is slick as fuck in the ring. His highlights are just crazy. He can do it all. He's ambidextrous, exciting, and looks for knockouts, showy, flashy knockouts. He's a monster right now. However, across from him, you have a very, and when I say very, game formidable opponent in Sergey Lipinets. Sergey Lipinets, I know he's not a world renowned name, but he has been in with quality fighters. And I think this may be a test, truthfully, for Jaron and his boots. I would like to see Lipinets fight at 140, but he had a hard time making it, and it seemed to be an issue for him. And he decided to campaign at 147 pounds. And truthfully, maybe it's for the better. At 147 pounds, you have way more of a deep division than at 140, where you got Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez. And I doubt that Sergey Lipinets and those guys are really lining up to fight. Um, Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez are lining up to fight a tough guy like Sergey Lipinets when they have their own qualm to figure out where they're fighting for undisputed champion. So I think the move and campaign at 147 was very smart, and I'm glad that he's taking this fight. You got to realize Sergey Lipinets. And I quote, Mikey Garcia said that he's never been hit harder by anybody that he's fought than Sergey Lipinets. In that fight, it was a barn burner. It was back and forth. It was very, very, very close. And then, of course, Mikey Garcia kind of skated his way to victory. But during the fight, he posed tremendous issues for Mikey. He has a lot of pressure. He has a tremendous punch. And Mikey Garcia had to dig deep to beat and best Sergey Lipinets. Mikey's tall, he's strong, and maybe not at 147 pounds when he goes up against the higher upper echelon of caliber fighters like Errol Spence. Errol's just a physical specimen. He's really, really big for 147. And Mikey Garcia probably could bang with other 147 pounders, but Errol Spence was the creme de la creme and the biggest of the big. So I see why he struggled with that. But Sergey Lipinets hit him with some really, really, really hard shots. And for him to step up and fight Jaron and his boots, I think it's a very, very good matchup for both guys. Sergey Lipinets is looking to solidify himself as a legitimate 147 pounder by taking on one of the hottest prospects in boxing. And Sergey Lipinets is going to actually be a true test for Jaron and his boots. Because look, the first couple of fights you're going to fight, at the end of the day, these fighters are investments. I'm not trying to sit here and take away from anything a fighter does. What they do is hard. And I keep saying that I want to respect the fighter. But what people and fighters need to realize too is if we don't have these conversations, the speculation, if we're not doing content of this nature, and we're not talking about the way things are in the sport and covering the sport, there is no sport. If there's no circus, if there's no audience, there's no circus. So when I speak, I'm not trying to speak from a vantage point of disrespect, but at the end of the day, boxing is a business, and they're trying to promote Jaron and his boots to get bigger fights. He's saying that he wants bigger fights, and now's the time to step up or shut up. And I personally think, like, looking at this fight, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a 50-50 fight. You got to go with Jaron and his boots because he's the hot prospect. Personally, I like the fact that he could do a lot more than Sergey Lipinets, but Sergey Lipinets is not going to get befuddled by what Jaron Ayers and his boots is going to do. The switching, the craftiness, the angles, the turning, all that stuff works to a certain degree. But once you hit a certain level, people have seen that before. People have been in the gym. You get the best sparring. You've been in with really good fighters, and they show you certain things that maybe you didn't realize you didn't know, and you kind of tighten up your game. And I think in this fight, Jaron and his boots is going to be in for a surprise because Sergey Lipinets is going to fight his ass off. And truthfully, as much as I want to say this, at 147 pounds, I wouldn't really be shocked if Lipinets hurts and drops and his boots a couple times in this fight. I'm not going to sit here and proclamate that Sergey Lipinets is going to win, right? I think and his boots is the favorite, and the reason is he's a good fighter. I think he can box. I think he's going to outbox Sergey Lipinets, but don't be surprised if he doesn't look as good as he looked in other fights. I'm going to sit here and say it. And his boots, if he destroys Sergey Lipinets, I'll shut up. And you know what? The guy's just the truth. But we also have to keep in mind that he is moving up from 140, and with COVID, we don't know what fighters are bringing to the table. Some fighters look immaculate, like Teofimo Lopez when he came out and fought Lomachenko, but Lomachenko looked bothered by the COVID layoff too. So you don't really know how fighters are going to come out. But I'm going to sit here and say if Ennis Boots destroy Sergey Lipinets, 147 has a problem because honestly, Jaron and his boots immediately becomes a top 6, top 7, in my opinion, welterweight, right? We haven't heard from Keith Thurman. God knows what he's up to since losing to Manny Pacquiao. I don't know what's going on with that guy. Then you have Errol Spence. Errol Spence is going to just be Errol Spence. So whether you have Errol number 1 and Terrence number 2 or vice versa, no problem with that. Then You have who? Manny Pacquiao, right? Then Shawn Porter, okay. But Shawn Porter really hasn't had a significant win. I mean, losing to Errol Spence, sure, you fought him, but you have a questionable decision against Ugas, right? And before that, you have a very, very tight fight with Danny Garcia. So Shawn Porter probably is going to be ranked above Jaron and his boots. But if he destroys Sergey Lipinets, then you start making a case for Ennis to be in that second tier. Shawn Porters, Danny Garcia, and I mean Keith Thurman. I don't want to call him like that second tier right now because he did just lose to Pacquiao. You can't be mad at that. It's one loss, right? And it doesn't really hurt you that much because Manny Pacquiao is what he is, a all time pound for pound great. I mean, you have to call a spade a spade. He's an eight-time, eight division champion and a multiple time titleist. But you have to start making the case that a lot of fighters at 147, right? Their resumes right now are looking a little iffy, right? So Ennis makes a statement win. You can arguably say that talent wise, potentiality wise, you look at everything. You have to start ranking this kid to be the truth. And hopefully after this fight, he took on a major fight. Maybe he fights another major fighter like a Shawn Porter or even, you know what, Keith Thurman. He wants to be the top dog. Maybe he fights Virgil Ortiz. You never know. The kid honestly is stepping up, and I'm very excited for this fight. Um, I'm not gonna make a prediction. You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna make a prediction right now. I think Jaron Ennis Boots is gonna get pushed. I think he's gonna get hurt. I think it's gonna be the first fight that we're gonna see Jaron Ennis Boots bleed. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I think Jaron Ennis Boots is gonna step up and really show his true potential because you need somebody and a good dance partner who's not gonna go away, who's gonna give you 100% of their effort the whole way through. And in order to see what you have, you need someone to push you. And I think Jaron and his boots is going to get pushed in this fight, but I do think he's going to win a very clear but close decision. Maybe 7-5, maybe 8-4. But I do think Sergey Lipinets, this is a fucking fun fight, and I hope you enjoy it. So that's kind of my thoughts. I feel like Jaron and his boots, if he destroys Sergey Lipinets, kid is up. I mean, there's just no question about it. He's the truth. But don't be surprised if Lipinets hurts him. Don't be surprised if he catches Jaron in his boots. And then Lipinets is going to propel himself into the conversation as one of the top welterweights. And at welterweight, can we get any deeper? For fuck's sakes. Well, that's the episode for today. Feel free to follow the podcast on Instagram at Good Boxing Podcast. And if you're not, you want to watch the YouTube channel, feel free to subscribe. Be well. Have a good day.